Iraq economic news and points to ponder Wednesday morning, April 30, 25. Listen to the full version on the official dinarreport.com website and become our supporter on Patreon. Finance. Work is underway to implement the ASYCUDA system in customs. Economy, 10/24 April 29, 2025. Mawazin News. Baghdad. The Ministry of Finance confirmed, on Tuesday, that it is proceeding with automation programs in the ministry's sectors, while indicating that work is underway to implement the ASYCUDA system in the customs sector. The Director General of the Financial and Accounting Training Center at the ministry, Ahmed Al-Dawlaki, said, "The Ministry of Finance is proceeding with the issue of automation and a comprehensive system in the ministry's sectors, including the banking sector." He explained that, work is underway to implement the ASYCUDA system in the customs sector, as experts at the United Nations are training employees for the purpose of its implementation. He added that, other departments in the ministry are working on digital transformation and automation, noting that, part of the work of the Financial and Accounting Training Center is capacity building, and there are intensive courses at the center for this purpose. Al-Iqtisad News publishes the full minutes of the cabinet session. Money and Business Economy News. Baghdad. Al-Iqtisad News publishes the full minutes of the 17th cabinet session held on Tuesday, chaired by Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani. The Prime Minister's media office said in a statement seen by Al-Iqtisad News, al-Sudani chaired the 17th regular cabinet session today, Tuesday, during which the general situation in the country was discussed. A number of files included in the government's strategic plans were followed up, in addition to discussing the topics on the agenda and taking the necessary decisions regarding them. The statement added, the Council of Ministers agreed to authorize the mayor of Baghdad and the governors, according to their specialization, to allocate plots of land belonging to municipal institutions to government service departments for use for official purposes, based on the provisions of the Municipal Administration Law, 165 of 1964, as amended. He added, within the framework of the strategic agreement signed between Iraq and Turkey during the Turkish president's visit to Baghdad last April. The Council authorized the Minister of Water Resources to issue invitations and sign contracts to implement projects such as the Al Jazeera Irrigation Project, the Haiya Irrigation Project, the Abu Takia Dam Project, the Al Abayad Dam Project, and the Hazar Dam Project. He pointed out that, as part of the government's efforts in the environmental field, the Council voted to adopt the National Initiative for Environmental Monitoring and Inspection as a strategic national measure, taking into consideration amending the initiative to include the Ministry of Environment contracting with relevant authorities to provide technical and logistical support to the environmental monitor in accordance with the law. He continued, within the framework of health efforts to confront epidemics, the Council of Ministers approved the recommendations of the Diwani Order Committee, 23,514 of 2023, as follows. 1. Establishing the National Committee for One Health, the national body responsible for managing all health and epidemic events and crises, and making the necessary decisions to protect society. It will be the body responsible for evaluating and directing events with the relevant authorities, to ensure an integrated and coordinated response to epidemic diseases. 2. Allowing the import of meat or live animals, with emphasis on taking all necessary measures to ensure their safety before and after their entry into Iraq, in order to preserve food security. 3. The Ministry of Finance shall finance an amount of 3 billion dinars from the Emergency Reserve Budget to the National Committee for One Health, to enable it to implement measures to control the spread of diseases, according to its operational plan, in a way that contributes to controlling diseases, including media, awareness, guidance and oversight activities, according to the classification of the Ministry of Health, as follows. 1.750 billion dinars to the Ministry of Agriculture, 1 billion dinars to the Ministry of Health, and 250 million dinars to the Ministry of Environment. 4. Providing continuity of service to government slaughterhouses for a period of 3 to 5 years, after qualifying them with the necessary requirements, processing units and veterinary supervision. The statement added, in the electricity file, the Council approved the following. First, the invitation for long-term maintenance, LTSA, for the DIBAS 2 times 160 megawatts GTE 160 units for a period of 5 years. For the DIBS gas power plant, under the supervision of the German company, Siemens Energy, with a period of implementation and maintenance of 5 years, according to the time schedule. And a continuous operation guarantee period of 5 years and 365 days, at the expense of the operating budget of the Ministry of Electricity after the last maintenance. And from an American or European origin, arriving at the station site at the expense of the German company. And authorizing the general manager of the general company for electricity transmission, Northern Region to sign the contract with the company. Second, referring the invitation for the supply of materials, first phase for the rehabilitation of units 1, 2, 4, of the Al-Musayab thermal power plant, to the German company, Siemens Energy. According to the payment method submitted by the company, and authorizing the general manager of the general company for the production of electricity, Middle Euphrates the authority to refer. And contract, provided that the procedures for the contract are in accordance with the instructions for implementing government contracts, 2 of 2014, and the controls attached to it. The statement highlighted that, in the transportation sector, approval was given to authorize the Minister of Transportation to negotiate and sign a draft cooperation agreement between Iraq and Tunisia in the field of maritime transport, based on the provisions of the Constitution. Single quote. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs will prepare the necessary authorization document and submit it to the General Secretariat of the Council of Ministers for the Prime Minister's signature. The Council approved the draft law on the protection of volunteer first responders and rescuers, which was reviewed by the State Council, and referred it to the House of Representatives. Taking into account the comments of the Legal Department of the General Secretariat of the Council of Ministers, in light of the changes made by the State Council to the aforementioned draft law. He explained that, within the government's work on infrastructure projects and the completion of those that are lagging behind, the following was approved. 1. Increasing the total cost and reserve amount for the project contract, construction of the second lane of the Rumaitha-Najmi Road, with a length of 12,700 kilometers, included in the budget of Muthana Governorate, with amending the project name to include details of the new section. 2. Creating a component, consultant, resident engineer for the complementary works project to establish a hospital in Basra Governorate, including the reserve amount, with an increase in its total cost, along with an increase in the total cost of the project, establishing a hospital in Basra Governorate. 3. Increase the reserve amount and the total cost of the contract, engineering supervision of the construction project of the General Secretariat of the Council of Ministers building. The statement concluded, within the framework of completing the oil refinery projects, the Council approved increasing the cost of the component, granting license P. 2171 halves, FCC, CCR, NHT, Penex, and increasing the reserve amount for the aforementioned contract within the total cost of the Karbala Refinery project. 57 Views April 29, 2025. A parliamentary committee announces its intention to pass important legislation in the next parliamentary session. Economy, 5/26 April 29, 2025. Mawazin News, Baghdad. The head of the Parliamentary Finance Committee, Atwan al-Atwani, announced today, Tuesday, that the committee will submit the law of the General Authority for monitoring the allocation of federal revenues to the second reading in the next session of the House of Representatives. A statement from his office, received by Mawazin News, stated that al-Atwani chaired, today, the closing session of the specialized workshop held by the Parliamentary Finance Committee in cooperation with the International Partners Foundation to discuss ways to maximize federal revenues, indicating that the workshop completed on its second day the discussion of the proposed amendments to the Law of the General Authority for Monitoring the Allocation of Federal Revenues No. 55, of 2017. With the aim of activating its work by adding new tasks and powers, setting mechanisms for implementing its duties, and defining the nature of the connection and relationship with the relevant authorities. Al-Atwani said, the Finance Committee is proceeding with its practical steps regarding diversifying sources of income and the gradual transition towards a diversified economy and not relying excessively on oil in financing the state budget. He added, the committee is determined to proceed with the second reading of the First Amendment to the Federal Revenue Allocation Monitoring Authority Law. After completing discussions and exchanging ideas, with the aim of activating this constitutional institution so that it can assume its true role in analyzing and evaluating the revenues of each government institution and setting realistic estimates of their revenues, whether from services or investment of assets and economic and development activities, in addition to monitoring their collection. Al-Atwani pointed out, the approval of this law, as we plan, represents the culmination of the efforts of the Finance Committee during this parliamentary session, and a national achievement that we are entitled to be proud of, especially since this strategic direction represents a real guarantee for a strong and robust economy, which secures the future of coming generations. Listen to the full version on the official dinarreport.com website and become our supporter on Patreon. Source: dinarrecaps.com